Okay. We invited all of you guys out here today just to give you a quick look at what we've been talking about. A lot of what we've seen over the last couple of years is we get so far into a project and then people are like, I have no idea what's going on. So we are trying to bring you guys in a little bit earlier, which in one aspect, some people may say, well, that doesn't make sense because you guys don't even have funding for this project yet, which is true. But we've had a couple people asking about this, and we kind of want to get you guys rolling on what this project is for, why we're doing it, and what it's going to look like. There will be road closures, there will be a little bit of disruption to you guys, but this is also something that needs to be done. We are talking about the section from Farview to Westerville Road. He's going to talk about, this is Mike Flickinger. He is our engineer. He has been working on this for how long now?
We've been talking about improvement since probably about 2009.
So, although we've been talking about this for years, and myself, we've been talking about this for years, this is just now starting to come to a project that we feel comfortable bringing to you. I think it's fair to say 2025, 2026 timeframe at this point in time. We have already hired a grant writer, which was here a couple weeks ago and did a presentation. That grant writer is in the process of working on getting us a grant and a loan combined to pay for this project. It is approximately again, this has not been out to bid yet, but the approximate estimated cost is at $1.4 million. This project, in the event that we do not get the grant and loan, will get pushed back a little further. But again, this is really just to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going to happen in your area. And I'm going to flip it over to Mike. We hope to get you guys in and out of here pretty quick because again, this is just all preliminary stuff right now. And I say that, but we have been pretty fortunate to get almost every single thing off the ground that we have gotten to this point. So go for it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out this evening. As the mayor mentioned, my name's Mike Flickinger. I'm the village engineer. I've been the village engineer since January 1st, 2005. So it's getting pretty close to 20 years. The project that we're going to talk about tonight is a proposed project on Minerva Lake Road. And as the mayor said, this segment of the project would extend from Farview Road to Westerville Road, State Route 3. I have a slide presentation. What I would like to do, if you all could humor me, is if you could just please let me get through the slides, and then we could have some time for question and answers. The reason I ask that is because sometimes you ask a question and it will be answered in 2 slides. If we could just do that, I'd appreciate it. The agenda for tonight, we'll go through some introductions, give you a little bit of a background of the problem conditions that we're looking to address with this project. I do want to discuss some village mobility goals, and that will make more sense to you when we get to those slides. Go over the proposed project scope and concept. So that's basically what have we considered to date, and what is the scope of the project on which we've based our funding applications. Discuss some of the project challenges, then let you all know the next steps, and then hopefully there's time for some questions and answers. So for the introductions, obviously, the project team, it's a pretty collaborative effort here. So from the village itself, we have the village administrative staff. So, that's working with the mayor, that's working with fiscal to try to make sure we have the right pieces in place to let a project go forward. That's, a good use of money. We work with the planning director who has, he has connections outside of the village talking to other funding sources. So from the administrative standpoint, we work together on the administration. All these projects are governed by the Streets Committee. The Streets Committee is the one who we really interact with, and the Streets Committee is supported by the council. And if you're not sure who's on the Streets Committee, I'd recommend you check the village website, and you can see who's on every one of the various committees and who the leader is. Jacobs, that's the company for which I work. We're the design professional. We're also your contracted village engineer. There are some projects that we do in the village where we will recommend another engineer to do it, either for cost effectiveness or just because we don't have the resources locally. Legal counsel, Frost Brown Todd, so we're always interacting with legal counsel just to make sure that our bidding documents are accurate, making sure that we're not overlooking something, because sometimes I come up with some pretty good ideas about how to potentially save you money, and then Jesse will keep me straight and say, no, you can't do that. So it keeps you guys out of legal trouble. And then there's always additional consultants on these projects. So for this particular project, Dynotech, who actually their headquarters is just right on the frontage road along East Dublin Granville Road, they provided the survey for this project. So the background of the problem condition. So as the mayor mentioned, we've been working on this for a while, and we started talking about this project. Not this exact project, but we've been talking about improvements to Minerva Lake Road basically since the time I got here. So, I mean, you know, it's been an ongoing discussion for about 20 years. But realistically, one particular problem has come to the fore, and that's drainage. So the picture on the left is basically what the Farview Road intersection with Minerva Lake Road looked like in 2015. There really wasn't a Farview Road. I mean, if you lived in the village, then basically that was an access drive to Hawthorne Elementary School. It had a name, and it kind of went through, but it always felt awkward if you drove through it because it felt like you were really going through someone's parking lot to kind of do a little side trip. Well, with the golf course development, you know, Farview Road was improved, and so Farview Road came all the way through from State Route 161 all the way into the golf course. And then if you remember, we improved Farview Road again when the middle school was being built. Well, one of the unintended consequences, I guess, of having Farview Road is if you are familiar with Farview Road on the golf course side, you know that the road generally slopes toward Minerva Lake Road. So what has happened with Farview Road having curb and gutter, stormwater is actually running along the curb and gutter, and let's see if I can find the pointer maybe. So stormwater is running this way, and it's running along this curb. So there's a curb and gutter here. And what happens is it's kicking around this curb because if you look at that intersection, there is a curb return. Like the curb extends around the corner, and then it just terminates. Like it just goes to zero. Well, what's happening is that stormwater doesn't have anywhere to go, so it just runs down the street, and it's starting to erode residents' driveways. And it's causing a lot of pavement problems along the side of the road. It's starting to erode the edge of the pavement, and it's eating away at people's driveways. So with stormwater is often one of the biggest challenges to pavement. You don't want it to get under the pavement, obviously. So that was sort of the last little nudge we needed to really focus on a project in this area. But there are some other problems in this area too. So the last project that was done on Minerva Lake Road was in 2014. There's always little patching projects, pothole projects, crack sealing, but the last major work on Minerva Lake Road was in 2014. So it was a resurfacing project performed by AJ Asphalt. It was the last year before we became the village engineer. To help with getting grants, one of the things that the village has focused on is we've done a pavement condition assessment in 2016, and then we did another one in 2022. We try to do them every 5 years if we can. The reason you want to do a pavement condition assessment is because that's just more data you can put into grant applications and loan applications that gives you more support for someone to fund your project. Because it's very easy to say, our road is not in good shape. But what does that mean, right? Well, there is a commonly accepted metric called a pavement condition index. So you can see it's a PCI. It's a score from 0 to 100. There is a specific internationally accepted standard to do this condition assessment. Village hired a local engineering company. Again, this is something that we could do, but our staff that does this is not based in Ohio, so it's not cost effective for us to do it. So we worked with a local minority engineering firm. They've done the 2 condition assessments. So you can see in 2016, this section of Minerva Lake Road, again, this is from a 0 to 100. This section of Minerva Lake Road was scored as a 61, which is considered fair, but that's also like D minus, right? I mean, so you're basically passing. 2022, it was a 51. So it's now considered to be poor. It's the 9th lowest PCI in the village. The 2nd or 3rd lowest we just addressed, that was the segment of Maplewood Drive from Cleveland Avenue to Lakewood. So that was the main focus of that project, was to improve that pavement. The worst scoring pavement in the village, I think, is Valley, going back to the swimming pool. So this is the 9th lowest. Basically everything on Minerva Lake Road is more or less like 3 through 10. So Minerva Lake Road as a whole has a composite score of 53. So that entire road is considered to be poor. As the mayor mentioned, just this segment, and I'll reinforce this later, we're looking at approximately a $1.4 million project, and this is maybe about 20% of Minerva Lake Road. So you can just start doing that math in your head and see how expensive it could be to improve Minerva Lake Road everywhere. The next thing I want to talk about is the village mobility goals. Now, if you've attended council meetings, listened to council meetings, work sessions, you've probably heard a lot more talk recently about improving mobility throughout the village. And what do we mean by mobility? It's basically providing ways for non-vehicular transportation to get around the village. Bicycles, walking, etc. So the administration and the council, they are committed to improving mobility options throughout the village and improving the safety. In some places we do. So obviously, for those of you who are familiar with the golf course development, there's, sidewalks all throughout that development. That's it. That's the only place really in the village that has sidewalks or paths or anything. We've been talking a lot about how do you get people from the Jordan Road area over to the swimming pool? How do you get people from Jordan Road down to this municipal building without forcing people to have to go onto Cleveland to then come through here? We've talked about how do you improve the connectivity from what I always refer to as the southern part of the village to get them to come up to the municipal building or swimming pool. So this is a topic of conversation for the entire village, and we're having preliminary conversations about, starting to create some potential paths. Like when I say path, I mean not the physical path, but routes, I think is a better word. Potential routes to get people around the village without, cars. Another reason, for those of you who are longer term residents of the village, just 5 years ago, there was 1 school in this village, and now there's 3. Right, and so that's a pretty big change, and there's always an emphasis on being able to get children to school without having to drive. There's a whole entire program across the United States called Safe Routes to School, and that's primary focus is providing ways for children to get to school without having to rely on a school bus or someone driving them. Minerva Park is involved in planning discussions for Link Us. I think if you've been on the internet, if you've been on any social media, I assume they have television ads, Link Us is a pretty big topic of conversation for this upcoming election. It's a wide-ranging program that has a bunch of sponsors, MORPC, CODA, et cetera. One of their key components of Link Us is to start providing more non-vehicular paths throughout Central Ohio. So they want to increase the ability to get around the city for transportation without using a car, rather than just recreation. And Minerva Park is kind of strategically located among 3 key areas that the Link Us group is focusing in on. It's Cleveland Avenue, Westerville Road, and the Allen Creek Trail. And so if you go to the Link Us website, you will see that the village is a sponsor of a potential project. It's really just trying to reserve money in case it goes forward to connect Cleveland Avenue to Westerville Road in some form. And that's very key for CODA because they're looking at running specific bus routes up and down those two roads. Again, it's not a project that's on the books, it's just the village sponsored it in hopes of reserving money should the Link Us initiative pass. And then the last bullet is the village does want to consider mobility options in all future roadway improvements. That doesn't mean that every project will include a sidewalk or a shared use path or something, but from the planning stage, we intend to discuss it on every project. It will only be included though if it's logical and feasible. So while it might make sense to put it, the village might not be able to afford it. Or it could be a situation where it's just like, this doesn't make sense because there's either not enough room or it's just not the value of putting it in there. So we will talk about it on every future roadway project. We'll even talk about it on non-roadway projects. If we're coming in and we're tearing up road to build a sewer or to reinstall a water line, we're going to talk about mobility. Again, it doesn't mean it will be in there, but it will at least be in the planning stage. So what's the proposed project scope and concept? So as the mayor mentioned, and I mentioned it earlier, this project extends from Farview Road. I don't know why all the mapping systems call it Farview Drive, but it's Farview Road down to Westerville Road. Now, we're saying that in general. We're saying down to Westerville Road. That second bullet point, there's some interesting stuff that goes on at that end of Minerva Lake Road. First off, ODOT actually has a project that they've designed and that they're intending to construct. The schedule is not, I don't think it's officially locked in yet, but for any of you who have come southbound on Westerville Road and you've gone to try to make a right-hand turn on a Minerva Lake Road and someone's flying down the right-hand side because that lane merges, ODOT is addressing that. So ODOT will be putting in a dedicated right-hand turn lane, and then I think 2 through lanes continuing.
I think they just did it.
It just ended, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
just ended.
They don't call it a right turn lane, but it dies further south.
Yeah, there was supposed to be one other component to that I thought they were going to add to the project. That's why I was like, I'm not sure if the whole schedule's been doped out, but
I don't know yet.
now some of you might ask, well, gosh, guys, if ODOT was going to do a project there, why didn't you just do your project at the same time? By the time we conceived this project, ODOT was no longer incorporating local projects into the project. So they will often do joint projects where they'll go out to the city of Columbus or Minerva Park and say, hey, we're going to do a project here. We'll let your project at the same time. You contribute the money to cover it. We didn't even know this was going to be a project, and so then when we approached ODOT, they said, nah, sorry, it's too late. Like, okay, darn it. The other weird thing that goes on is if you've ever looked at GIS or you've ever looked at the auditor's website, the municipal boundaries at the east end of this road are weird. I think the apartment complex is not in the village. I think that's technically in the city of Columbus. But what happens is the boundary kind of makes a weird jog. So on some references, it looks like it's farther west of Westerville Road. Like it could cut, in some references, it actually will show the boundary like right in here. Some references show it farther down here. So what we need to do is we need to just confirm that, and then we need to have a conversation with the city of Columbus, because at a minimum, we're going to be tying our storm sewer into their storm sewer system, so we will probably have to get Not necessarily an easement, but like a documentation that allows us to make that connection. All right, so that's the extent of the project. So what's the general scope of work? Probably the most pressing, the biggest thing that you would see is the roadway improvements. So it's going to be a complete reconstruction of the roadway. So if any of you happen to see what happened over on Maplewood, it's basically you're removing all of the pavement down to the subbase. You guys might have heard the term mill and fill, which is what's happened a lot in the village, where a machine comes in and it takes off about 2 inches of pavement and then you put 2 inches down. This is not that. This is removing all of the pavement all the way down to subbase and rebuilding it. It's in such bad shape that needs to happen. Right now, our project is based on roller compacted concrete with an asphalt surface. So that's, it's a newer, not necessarily a technology, but it's becoming more prevalent. Farview Road was built that way, and all the roads in the golf course were built that way. So basically, you come in and you put a section of concrete rather than a whole asphalt buildup. You put the concrete down, and it's roller compacted, so it's still trucks are, it's the concrete trucks are putting it in a machine, and it's getting rolled out, and it's getting compacted, and then you put the asphalt on top of it. The prevailing wisdom is that it's a longer lasting pavement buildup. I'm not 100% sure that everyone has that documented yet, just because it's relatively newer and residential uses, but we feel this is a good option for the village here. I did mention the drainage, so we're going to have curb and gutter, and then associated storm sewer. So, when you install the curb and gutter, you have the curb inlets, so that water has to go somewhere. You have storm sewers cutting across the street, and then a storm sewer running all the way up along the side, and then it will tie into the storm sewer system that runs along State Route 3. So currently now there are no curbs, no gutters. It just runs down the middle if you're lucky. It runs into your yards. This would contain everything in the curb and gutter. And
Actually, partway down there, the last couple houses have gutters.
Right, because it's kind of, and it's coming back up from Westerville Road. So that's because we would tie in down there. We would tie our curb and gutter in down there. We would adjust the existing utilities as needed. So that's just, if there's any water valves in the road, any sanitary sewer manholes in the road, we'll bring all that stuff up to grade. We are currently showing a shared use path or concrete sidewalk. So I'll get to that in a couple slides, but that is currently in the scope of work. That's what we wanted to show for the construction cost estimate. That's what we wanted to take to MORPC and OPWC for the grant application. Improving connectivity, especially with schools, is a very good thing to show in your grant application. It's very helpful. And then signage and pavement striping, just the regular traffic control. So what would the road look like? So this is a normal section. This is looking east toward Westerville Road. This is not down at the intersection, where you would have turn lanes. This is just the kind of the normal roadway. So you can see we have curb and gutter on the south side of the road, curb and gutter on the north side of the road. You come off the back of that curb by 3 feet, and we're currently showing a 6 foot wide shared use path on the north side of the road. As currently shown in the documents, and I'll talk about this in a few slides, we're currently showing this path as an asphalt path. Okay. If you can do quick math in your head, you'll see that basically from back of curb to back of curb, if you add up those dimensions, 2 feet, 12 feet, 12 feet, 2 feet, that should be 28 feet, right? 12, 12, 24, 26, 28, 28 feet. Back of curb to back of curb is 28 feet. For frame of reference, the existing pavement is about, it varies because, the road kind of winds. Let's just say it's roughly 23.5 feet wide. So what you would see is a roadway section that is about 5 feet wider than the existing roadway section. So the intent is to try to center it on the existing center line. So realistically, you would see a curb and gutter basically about 2.5 to 3 feet closer into your properties than the pavement ends today. That's for a frame of reference. It kind of varies, but generally that's that's the thought. So what are the project challenges? Every project has them. The four that I want to touch on tonight, the construction costs in the project funding, the mayor already mentioned that. The maintenance of traffic during construction, the maintenance of mail service during construction. This will make more sense to you in a couple slides, but it's something that we are definitely going to have to coordinate with the post office, and hopefully they are responsive and wanting to coordinate, and then minimizing the impacts to properties. That's always our goal. I promise I do not wake up every morning trying to disrupt you all, to take land from you, to come deeper into your yards. But unfortunately, sometimes construction takes some room. So, construction costs and project funding. So this one is the one that the mayor mentioned earlier. So right now we're looking at an opinion of probable construction costs as of July 2024 of about $1.3 million. So that number is trying to project into a 2025 construction season. We are looking at a number of sources to fund this project because, as you might suspect, the village doesn't have $1.3 million in their roadway fund to cover this. So what have we tried to do? So as the mayor mentioned, the village contracted with a grant writer. We've had very good success with him on 3 projects, I think, to date in the village. The very first project he did for the village, we actually got the highest score in the entire application process. And it's the first time that I've been engineer that we didn't get kicked over into the second funding pool. So that's the value that Ben has brought by working with the village. So we've applied to get OPWC funding. That OPWC, it's managed locally by MORPC, so OPWC is at the state level, and then they have multiple districts within the state, and then there are various entities throughout the state that manage it. Here in Central Ohio, it's MORPC, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, if you're not familiar with that acronym. We will be using a street maintenance fund. There is money in the street maintenance fund to help cover some of the costs. There are permissive, so the motor vehicle licenses. So when you go renew your driver's license and you do your license plates, there's a portion of that comes back to the village. I think there's some legislation on that earlier this year. We're going to use some of that money. Because we do have storm sewers, we're going to be able to use money from the storm sewer maintenance. So, that money can go toward the storm sewer components. We'll be using money probably from the water line maintenance fund because we will be doing some infrastructure where it's probably just raising valve boxes, but we're also relocating fire hydrants. So all that money can be paid for out of the water line maintenance. We will be touching some sanitary sewers, raising manholes and kind of adjusting some things. So we'll be using money from the sewer maintenance fund. And then depending on when this project goes forward, there is an opportunity to use Link Us money to help cover it. Now, the challenge with that is this is on the ballot in 2 weeks. So realistically, if it passes, how quickly does that generate money? And then how quickly will that money get dispersed out to the communities? I'm not, depending on when this project goes forward, I'm not necessarily banking on it. It would be nice if we got it, so. Maintenance of traffic during construction. So, the current intent, as the project is conceived right now, we intend to do partial width construction, which basically means we will demo and then build one side of the road at a time. So if you remember Maplewood, we did a complete shutdown because that area was just too small to do that. So we completely shut that down. The reason that project was delayed as long as it was because until the golf course was built, there was no way to get to those streets if that road had to be completely shut down. And building it in partial width was going to be so cost ineffective that we didn't want to do it. So finally, once we had, granted it was a circuitous detour and I heard all about it, but there was a detour that you could cut, get through the golf course. So in this situation, it's not practical to do a complete shutdown. This road is long enough and wide enough, so we're going to do one lane at a time. So we'll maintain one lane throughout construction. The intent, as currently designed, is throughout the duration of the project, there will be eastbound only traffic. So when we're working on the eastbound lane, you'll go eastbound. When we're working on the westbound lane and the eastbound lane is open, you'll be going eastbound. When we're working on the eastbound lane and the westbound lane is open, you'll still be going eastbound. So we don't intend to change the direction of that traffic. Once we start construction, currently, it's all eastbound. Now, note this last bullet. To be coordinated with police, fire, the post office, and the Westerville City School District. That is our intent is to send it eastbound because we think that there is value in, and please don't take this the wrong way, there is value in getting people out of the village, like getting people to Westerville Road. However, depending on when this project goes, our goal would be to do it in the summer. But because of when funding is available, if this is an OPWC project, you can't start dispersing money to a contractor until July 1st. So you have to time it just right so that maybe you can give a contractor a notice to proceed in June so he could start July 1st, but it's rarely that you get it to work quite right. So there's a very good possibility this could extend into the school year. So I'll be reaching out to the school district, the busing people. We've had a couple conversations about other projects just to get their thoughts. Like, do you want your buses turning left on the Westerville Road or do you want them turning right off of Westerville Road? I don't know how their routes will go. Similar to police and fire, we do want to get their input. Like, what is their, I think a lot of you have probably tried to turn left across Westerville Road and it's not always fun. But now, if you're doing it with larger vehicles, and that's the only way police and fire can get around, we want to talk to them about that. And we want to talk to the post office, and I have next slide is about that, and get their input. I'm also interested in your input. I can't promise that if you want it to be westbound only, that, that'll be the answer. But we're going to try to take information from everybody and say, okay, what's the best for the project and the best for the most people? So this is what this is I know like the intent here is not to, oh, you can't see my mouse. The intent is not for you to know what all this stuff is, but this is just a snip from our projects that shows the maintenance of traffic. And what we're showing here is, we're just showing there's a road closed sign here and here. So this will just say like closed, local traffic. And then, here will be a no right turn sign. And then here would be a no left turn sign. Those would flip depending on if we change the direction. So the mail is kind of interesting. First off, no matter what we do, we're going to be removing and resetting mailboxes just because the road's getting wider. So the mailboxes are in the way, and so they have to get outside of the curb. So that's a given. But kind of interestingly, if you think about how your mail's delivered, he's only on one side of the truck. Your mail carrier is only on the right side of the truck. So if we're going eastbound only, that mail can't be delivered to the people on the north side. Like their mailbox is inaccessible. So what we need to do is we need to talk to the post office to say, how do you want to address this? And it could be temporary mailboxes. So maybe the people on the north side, your mailboxes might be on the south side of the street for construction. But then when we're working on the south part of the road, then the mailboxes might have to shift over, And so it's going to be a little balancing act or a juggling act to figure out how to make the mail work during this. And this is why I want the post office to have input. We really weren't successful in getting their input on Maplewood Drive, so we're just going to have to try to be much more proactive here. And I basically intend to go knock on the local postmaster's door and just be like, this is coming, so you need to tell us what you want. So that's the plan. I'm hoping that they'll I'm hoping that they'll want to do like temporary mailboxes, so you're just walking across the street or whatever. I'm hoping that they're not saying we're going to make a centralized mailbox at like the municipal building or something and everyone has to come up here. I'm hoping to avoid that, but one thing I've learned over my time is they tell you, basically, so. Excuse me. So the last challenge I mentioned was minimizing impacts to properties. So, as I mentioned, we are currently showing a shared use path or a sidewalk on the north side. And then also we have to relocate the fire hydrants. Both sides, everyone's going to get new driveway aprons. So when this project is done, you'll have a concrete apron that, connects from the new road to a point to your existing driveway. And we have in the plans, every one of those driveway aprons is designed so we can tell the contractor what elevations they need to match. Because now we have curb cuts and you have to get through the curb and the elevations are different and things like that. What we will do before we start construction is the contractor will, document every driveway. And so then that way you're protected and then the contractor is protected in case there's a dispute, like if they damage your driveway and we can prove it, then they'll be responsible for fixing your driveway. I think every project I get asked this. We can talk to the contractor about doing work in your driveway while he's there or while the contractor is there. It would require you to basically execute your own agreement with the contractor, and the timing of that would have to be in effect like subservient to the project. Like he can't, we don't want him to delay the project while he's kind of doing a side project. But if we know in advance and you want to talk to the contractor, usually they can work that into the schedule. So if you think that's something, as we get closer to this project, if you think that's something that interests you, then I would recommend that we have a conversation early before the project goes out to bid so that we could talk to the contractor and just judge their warmth to the idea. Now you've heard me mention a shared use path a few times. So I want to focus on this area that's inside the cloud. If you are familiar with the term shared use path, multi-use path, various communities say different things. If you look at your local communities, so the city of Columbus, their shared use path is generally, their default is a 10-foot wide path. So that's, to allow basically bidirectional traffic. So that's two bikes should be able to pass each other. If anyone's been out on any of the trails in central Ohio, there's going to be dogs. And that leash is going to extend all the way across the trail while you're walking or riding. There's going to be bikes. There's going to be strollers. Strollers are getting bigger. There's going to be wagons. So the intent is always to have enough room for two people to pass. Other communities have, like the city of Dublin, they have a 10-foot option and they have an 8-foot option. We looked at an 8-foot option. if we could, 8-foot wide shared use path is probably as small as you would realistically want to go. We looked at it, it was just too intrusive. We just couldn't fit it in within the right of way, and it really wreaked havoc on the northern properties. So we talked to the village and said, here's the problem we're having, would you accept a 6-foot wide path? It gets you closer to what you're trying to do. It's not quite the 8. The feedback was, yes, let's look at a 6 and see if we can implement that. So as I mentioned before, the project currently shows asphalt. So it has, a typical buildup, and then you would see a 6-foot wide asphalt path running down the street. Very common, but also not necessarily everyone's first choice in their front yard. I mean, let's be fair. And a lot of communities address it different ways. So what we intend to do is, when this project goes forward, without knowing where everything is going to settle on the pricing, we will bid the project. The base bid, I intend the base bid to not include a path at all. And the reason I want to do that is because that will allow the village to award a project without the path. If I bid it with the path and then the village says, oh darn, we could afford everything except the path, you can't award the project without the path, because then you have changed the scope of the work without going through another bid. So the process there is you'd have to award the project and then zero it out. And then you mess with pricing and stuff like that. So what I intend to do is bid the project as a base bid of just the road. Then we intend to give 3 bid alternates so we can see where these come in. One alternate is going to be a 6-foot wide asphalt path. One alternate is going to be a 6-foot wide concrete path. And then one alternate will be a 4-foot wide, kind of like a typical sidewalk. The ultimate goal is to improve mobility. And if we can do it and a 4-foot sidewalk is the answer, and it's what can be afforded, and it's what the village as a whole is willing to support, then there's probably value in doing that. But we want to get the prices up front so that we know what that will be. But again, we want to bid it without it so that if the funding isn't available, we can at least award a roadway project. Paths could come later. So what are the next steps? We're currently awaiting the results of the funding application. So the draft scores are supposed to be available according to the OPWC schedule in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks plus or minus, 11-14. Then they're going to make their final recommendations on December 20th. So what that own application only means is the village will be notified of their draft score, but they won't see anybody else's draft score. And then MORPC as an agency, that group will, the OPWC people within MORPC, they will make their final recommendations. So what will happen is the village will then know by the end of January if they're going to get the funding, and then the village will know, December. The village will know pretty much by the end of December if there will be a project in 2025. We have a little bit of design to finalize. So as I mentioned, we need to confirm the east project limits with Columbus primarily, a little bit of ODOT coordination. We need to finalize the maintenance of traffic plan and the maintenance of mail service, as I mentioned on the previous 2 slides. Develop the bid alternates for the path and the sidewalk. So what we have to do is we have to strip that out of the project and then design the roadway is already designed, but it's all the stuff outside the road. We have to pretend we're not going to put a path in. And unfortunately, it's not just a simple matter of saying, oh, give me this or this or this. Like, we have to go through and basically show it, develop all the quantities, make sure everything is accurate for the contractors to bid. Then we're going to finalize the bid schedule. So as I mentioned, we prefer to do the construction before the start of the 2025-2006 school year. But that OPWC, like I said, generally you're not allowed to submit for funds, like to get paid until July 1st of the following year. We've done other, like we've got, the way we've done that in the past is we've had the contractor get his notice to proceed in like June, so he can start working on submittals and scheduling and stuff, and then mobilize on July 1st. We've also had them mobilize ahead of time but not submit a pay application until July 1st, which, if you get a contractor that can kind of float you a small, month loan, basically, a lot of them are willing to do that. It's just something that we'll have to coordinate with OPWC just to make sure we don't run afoul of their funding requirements. So with that,
How long do you expect the project to take? Assuming no sidewalks, but the street project itself, how long do you expect from beginning to end of road closure?
I feel like it's probably about a 2-month project, 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Some of it just depends on, obviously it always depends on the weather. But it'll just depend on availability, when they can get out there, what equipment is available. Currently, we don't have, the project does not currently reflect the quick setting concrete.
Yes.
Like we made a change during construction on the Maplewood Drive project. The contractor asked if we'd be interested in considering a change to go with the quick setting concrete. And for a very small upcharge, it allowed us to shave like 10 days off the project, which 10 days in general doesn't sound like a big number, but when it's a month-long project, 10 days was a pretty significant thing. So there's probably an opportunity to try to do some of that here.
And it was extremely minimal. I don't think it was $2,000.
No, it was about $2,000 on a $188,000 project. So it was well worth, in my opinion, it was well worth the $2,000.
Yeah, the residents that it affected, I'm sure. Was
But I could see it being 8 weeks.
Okay.
The fact that we have to do some sewer work, maybe it's 2.5 months.
Okay. Again, I just feel like that's a question that most
Yeah.
people are going to start asking here over the next couple weeks.
The piping work usually takes a little bit longer on these projects, so I could see that sort of extending the duration.
That would have been my first question if I lived right there. So go
Does
ahead.
the width that you said, 28 feet, from 23 and a half to 28, is that road only? It has nothing to do with the walking path?
Correct. It's from the back of the curb to the back of the curb.
Right, so, but that still affects both sides, 2.5 to 3 feet on
Correct.
both sides already
Yes.
without a walking path.
Yes.
Did you look at going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes?
No.
Because that would be a lot more helpful for him to give up the land, in my opinion.
To give up
Yes.
if we did 3 lanes, that means that take out the walking path. You won't fit a walking path in there.
Right.
Number one, to do 3 lanes, I don't think we could justify it from an engineering perspective because the traffic will not merit 3 lanes.
Even with all the school buses?
Even with all the school buses. Their traffic studies tell you that with all those school buses, it doesn't justify a traffic light at Westerville Road. So it would be very difficult for me to justify a center turn lane. Because also, what would the center turn lane turn into? People's driveways, I guess, right?
Well,
You'd be out of right of way.
And then-
now you have to start purchasing property.
And then
Instead of using right of way.
that was the next place I was gonna go. So instead of 2 feet on each side before the path,
okay.
you're now basically 7 feet into everybody's yard before a path. And we only have 50 feet. There's 50 feet of right-of-way. I think it's a 50-foot right-of-way from center line. So it's basically 25 to 25. And so you take the 28 and add basically 12 more. So now it's 40. So now you'd have 40 feet. So you'd go from a 23-foot wide pavement to a 40-foot wide pavement.
Right.
So basically, you're 7.5 feet into everybody's yard on both sides.
Costs money.
So, right, so you can't do that, but even with the 2.5 feet on both sides, if you're adding a path on the north side, that's really cutting into everybody on the north side way more,
True.
like a lot more.
And yes, and there's a possibility that we shift off the center line a little bit and we shift, we could look to shift some things a little farther south, but the problem is we're fixed, right? I mean, you can only do so much because we have an intersection to hit down there and we have an intersection to hit up here. So you're not really going to change the horizontal alignment very much. So in this case, yes, the people on the north side, if there is a sidewalk or a path, they would have, more of their yard would be affected than the people on the south side.
So it would be, rather than 2.5 or 3 feet, it would be more like
10.
10
It's
feet?
about 10 feet.
6 feet and 3 feet between the sidewalk and the curb.
So, who decides about the walking path? How does that get decided? I mean, is there some sort of a vote, or do people get a?
Council will actually take up that last part of the vote. Depending on, again, the Linkus, and if anybody else wants to step in, you guys are more than welcome to. As we put this project, as we get closer, again, we're gonna know about the Linkus project here in 2 weeks, whether or not that's even an option or not an option. The village has also been working on getting funding from other federal programs, grants. We do, I don't want to say, there are several people that have worked extremely hard to try to get some additional funding from the federal government as well as our state to help us get some of these walking paths. Some of that may happen, some of it may not. Assuming that we move forward with this project, with the walking paths, it's going to be approved from council because they approve all of these types of contracts. So it will go to council, they will approve the funding for it. Once it goes out to bid, we'll get the bids. It then comes back to council for them to vote yes or no to move forward on the project. At any point, they can say, we don't want to do this, or why did we do this? Without going too far into this, we did look at the south side versus the north side. There were logistics with the engineer, with a lot of different things as to why we chose the north side versus the south side. Just as, again, I may be giving way too much information, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but we did look at both sides of which way makes more sense, less trees, less driveways, less work to be done. The pool on that side of the road, there was many things that went into play as to how we picked, and I don't want to mean that I personally picked it, but which side made more sense. And that's what they came up with that particular, again, we're not trying to do both sides, we're not trying to do all of that, we're trying to get people from A to B as a village, what is the least disruptive to benefit the most amount of people. And that is how this particular project went forward. So again, if we have the funding to move forward with the sidewalks, it will come to council. If we only have the funding right now to just do the streets, that will go to council. So council, the 6 council people will be the ones that vote to move forward on this particular project. And the reason that we're bringing this, the reason that we're bringing this to you is right now, because again, we don't even have funding for this project. I don't want to make it sound like we're not doing it. We have talked about some of these projects, including Maplewood, since I started over 6 years ago. So it just now happened. But I'm just going to say that over the last year or two, people are getting, I don't know about this, I don't know about this, I don't know about this. So again, we're trying to get you guys in here before we get to the bidding process and we get to all of that. Again, just so you guys can kind of know what's going on even before we have the funding. So this could be something, I don't want to be negative, but 5 years from now. That's not the goal. The goal is that we break ground in July. But again, there's a lot that's going to go into it. Before that, council will do 3 readings. We typically do not waive readings for these types of projects unless, you can laugh all you want, unless it means not getting this project done in ample time for like the school district. If we're trying to get this done right at June and we've got these bids, that would be the only way that they would want to waive readings or do something like that. Because again, these particular projects, we do 3 readings. So you would again be able to come in and ask questions, do anything like that. You're always more than welcome to email council, myself, anybody for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've just got more of an aesthetic question than anything else. MI sidewalks are 4-foot wide concrete, right?
Yeah, I'm
The
pretty
new
sure.
Maplewood, when I've walked it, it seems like it might be 5. I mean, I think aesthetically, I've seen, and you can, if you guys drive Walnut Street from Spring to Otterbein, you'll see a crappy little asphalt sidewalk that no one takes care of. It looks like shit. Concrete always looks better.
I agree.
So, I would vote for more, because I mean, who's driving down there? I mean, they're walking or riding a bike.
Correct.
You could step off to let someone buy on a 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk, in my opinion, and concrete always looks better.
Absolutely.
Plus it matches the new subdivision,
Yep.
ties it in.
Okay, couple questions. Has any consideration been given to preserving the majestic trees that we have on Minerva Lake Road? 2, during construction, will we have access to our driveways, or should we park in schools?
So the answer to the first,
Number 3?
oh, okay.
If you don't mind. A couple years back, there were a lot of gas leaks up and down Minerva Lake Road. Gas company said, it's 50 years old, it's at the end of its life. Has that been considered as well?
All right, I'll answer them in order.
Okay. And
Number
thank you for
one,
everything.
number
Great
one,
presentation.
my intent is to never, I should say never. My intent is to minimize the amount of trees that get removed on any project. If you've seen some of the recent sewer projects we've done, someone might say that's not my goal, just because of where the sewer projects are. We will try, if we go with a 4-foot wide sidewalk, for example, that probably helps mitigate or minimize the number of trees that are disrupted. But if council does decide to put some form of path down there, I can't tell you how many trees right now, I haven't quantified, but trees unfortunately could be cut down. So it's not our intent to go out of our way to take down trees, but
When will we know?
well, I won't know until I know if there's going to be a path. I mean, I can show, well, I don't have the drawing pulled up, but I mean, we have a quantity, I think we're showing like 7 trees total maybe being, I can look at after this and just say how many trees we think are currently marked to be removed.
Question 2, access to driveways?
The access to the driveways, you're gonna have to take a shuttle, but no. The intent is that everyone will have access to their driveways throughout the day. So what will happen is if there's no road there, you'll be driving over probably like a steel plate to get into your driveway. So there'll be a stretch where there will be a gap in your road because we'll be putting in a curb. And so there'll be a steel plate over that. And then you'll have access to your driveways during construction.
Maplewood did not lose access. Those residents were able to get to their driveways.
It's generally with a thick steel plate that you bridge, like a little bridge that bridges
I'm
the
just
gap.
thinking during the day they're probably working there too.
Yeah.
Slow going.
So,
And then
They might be right there, you might have to wait a minute or two, but yeah.
and then the third question was
Gas line.
gas line. That's the first I've heard of that. So we do contact all the utilities to look at our plans ahead of time. So we can just follow up with Columbia Gas and say, hey, we're going to be doing a roadway project in this area. Did you have anything on your books to do upgrades in here? And if you did, maybe do it now. They tend to directionally drill everything now, so it's less invasive. They don't do a whole lot of like open cutting. But maybe in this case, if we're already doing some open cutting, they might want to. So we'll coordinate that with Columbia Gas.
Is it like those horizontal drills that they shove stuff through?
Yep.
Is that- okay.
Those little Ditch Witch is like the Ditch Witch or Vermeer, I think, are the two main manufacturers.
It's almost like sideways drilling for oil.
And they,
kind of
and they have, yeah.
Oil or water. Sorry.
Yeah, the smaller rigs tend to do it in the neighborhoods on the tracks and stuff. You're welcome.
I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Because I feel like if I had a Sophie's choice of whether I could only go east or only west, I would choose
I
west.
would choose west.
I think that
A
makes
lot of us do
actually
that
more
anyway.
sense too, because you don't have to make a left on the,
Yeah, that's terrible, I don't do that
you
now.
can go up to Farview, then go right.
Yeah.
That was my guess too.
If we
I
could
think,
weigh in
I
on
think the
that.
bus company would agree with that.
I think-
You live right near the stop sign, and all buses go west.
Actually, there's a bus that comes down, doesn't pick my kid up anymore because he drives, but it does come down and go east to pick up the high school kids. But it makes a right and goes, picks up more. But I think still going west.
I mean, if it were,
It makes more sense to me.
yeah, if it were me, I would prefer to turn into the village than out of the village, especially because if you did need to, like you said, you could go up to Farview, you can make that right-hand turn. If you're not comfortable with that, you can go to Ponderosa and turn at a light. But as I mentioned, the first thought was getting people out, because that's generally where you're trying to get people out, like
That is a good first thought.
they're going to
That makes sense if you don't
their,
live there.
they're going to their work day.
It is.
But when you start thinking about all the other options, I can see where, especially for people who would be for people who would be doing it every day,
Yeah.
that going westbound would probably be
Hey, you guys are getting some paint down there here before long.
more comfortable.
You guys are getting some paint
But
down
on the
there.
other hand, it's local traffic only, so
I'm sorry?
you have it local traffic only, so you shouldn't have a ton of people cutting through anyhow.
You shouldn't, but
So,
Right.
is the link us the thing that determines the walking path?
Not necessarily. There are several different funds that we're looking into. We believe that there is an $850,000 grant, that we are going to be receiving for walking paths, and possibly even it could be used for walking paths around the lake, it could be used for, other lake improvements, it cannot be used for dredging. We believe that we are getting that, but it's it's federal, so I don't wanna say when we're going to get that. So it's not the only pot of money, no.
Well, I wanna know how to vote no on it, that's what I wanna know. I mean, I don't want the walking path, cause it's like gonna come way up into our front yard. So I wanna know how I can have a voice to say no to that.
You can
That's
vote,
what wanna
I mean,
know.
No on 47.
so yeah, that's issue 47, but that's not the sole issue of how we're
I mean,
determining this project.
I would encourage, you guys are gonna love what I'm about to say, but I would encourage you to come to council and speak during citizens' comments.
And when those are like once a month?
I think they're the
We're here all
first.
the time, I feel like. We
They're
definitely
the-
have those for citizen comments Thursdays, it's typically the second Thursday and the fourth.
Second and fourth Thursday of every month. There's one thing I wanted to write down.
I have several comments, but again, thank you for having this meeting finally tonight. I think it would have been beneficial to have it before this, instead of getting to the end.
We're nowhere near the end.
What, you're talking possibly next year. I mean, this is very significant. It's very significant to me. I'm gonna lose probably, with my landscaping, 33% of my front yard. My driveway, 20%. That's gonna decrease the value of my house. Putting blacktop in, I don't even know why that is consideration. I agree with you. We are a neighborhood. We are not a park. An asphalt pathway to put people from Cleveland Avenue to Westerville, it shouldn't even be even an option.
The only reason it was brought up was just to get a price. No one was committing to it.
It's been talked about in several meetings.
But
It might have been a long time
the
ago.
intent is to get a price.
But again, you have it as an option. To me, it shouldn't even be an option. This is a neighborhood. You're taking away the neighborhood feeling if you put a park path through our front yard. And again, you're taking a significant portion. And you shouldn't just be talking to us. Where are you going to go with this? You just going to go to Farview and stop? Or is the plan to go all the way to Cleveland Avenue?
Yeah.
You have a lot of
Everybody was
houses.
invited to this meeting as it was posted online. This is because your guys' driveways are going to be affected.
I'm just saying.
That is why we're having this meeting, is the street project. We wanted to bring it to your guys' attention of a walking path that is a dream world at this point in time. And whether or not we even mentioned the walking path was something that I wanted to do because it is being talked about. But if we have no funding to do it, So these meetings will continue as we continue to go down Minerva Lake Road. Again, this is years in the making of just this little section of $1.4 million for this street project. So to think that we're gonna continue and continue and continue at $1.4 million for all of the different sections down through here is completely in a dream world right now. So this is just for this particular section right now. It gets the kids, the walking path would get, and I'm not in disagreement. The sidewalk matches the whole other section. I'm not in agreement on the walking path either. That belongs down in there. But as far as the sidewalk goes, it gets the kids to school, it gets them out of the street. There are so many different things as far as, I mean, again, agree with it or don't, but that's why the schools have the safe walking, or what's it called? She's been working on it for over a year, the safe path to school. So there's a lot of benefits to property values when you are able to walk to certain places as well. So please keep that in mind.
No, but I appreciate
And I think
it.
that
Yes,
makes sense
absolutely.
though, on our section too, because we're so close.
You are so
To the
close
three
to the
schools.
schools, absolutely.
Even though we all know eventually, the
Right.
entire Minerva Lake Road's gonna get done.
We hope.
Or wants
I
to be
mean,
done,
we
right.
would, in a perfect
And I think
world,
there
we
should
would
be
be doing it.
sidewalks all the way up.
Yeah.
Concrete 4-foot wide sidewalks.
I appreciate this, at least the sharing the opinion, because, I mean, at the end of the day,
Right.
I feel like no matter what happens, there's, I don't wanna say bad decisions, but just consequences of decisions.
There is.
Whether you're gonna let kids and people ride their bikes on the street, or you wanna let them ride on the sidewalk that you create, but it also encroaches in the right of way of what people feel like is their yard.
I got two questions. Number one, did we ever consider moving past to the back side of the houses where utility easement is? Come in at the railroad, go up the back, you got,
You can't, you'd have to, the easements are specifically written for utilities.
okay,
So then we would have to go back to every property owner first. We'd have to go back to every property owner and get new easements to allow us to do it. Second, we will destroy those backyards building it, because all the equipment has to get back there.
well, they get access from school.
And so, yeah, but we're going into people's backyards. I want to stay, I've done, my last 2 sewer projects, I've been in people's backyards, and
They were fun.
they're very challenging.
I'm getting enough water in my backyard now without you getting more of it.
Why can't you partner with the school, and put it on the school property?
Yeah, you've seen my backyard.
For just the paths in itself, or.
Yeah,
So again, you had sent me the email, she had already been working on a lot of different things with working with the schools and trying to get different, I think we missed the one deadline.
We missed the deadline because I was the only one working on it.
Yeah, so we are continually, going back to exactly what you said, we are continually looking for funding opportunities, including the safe, I don't know exactly
Safe
what it's
routes
called.
to school.
Safe routes to school, grant money and things like that, because this is look at it any way you want. There are many people, and I see you guys, I see a lot of you guys out there walking every single day in our village, in our neighborhoods, and just having a safe way to do it is beneficial to everyone. So I understand that there's gonna be people that don't want them through their front yard. I would love one through my front yard instead of walking in the street, which is what I have to do. So it's something that in a perfect world, we want it to go as many places in the village as we possibly can. But at this cost, it's gonna be years and years in the making, hopefully. But we will continue with the safe routes to school. We will continue with federal funding and state funding and any other grants that we can do. We try to do as many grants as we can. Any free money is better than our money.
So partnering with the school makes sense.
Yes.
As a shared cost.
So yes, so with that, we have,
To maintain.
Well, but then
and
but then also you cede all control over it. They can just put up a gate and not let you use it. That's, I mean, the intent is not just to get people to school. I mean, the intent is
It's for
for it to
everybody
be a
to be able to use it.
community thing.
well, my thought was if you come in at the railroad entrance down at the end of Minerva Lake Road, you go to the backyards, and you've got, what, 30 feet wide of a whole section to use going all the way down to Farview. Boom, you're connected to another sidewalk that runs you through the rest of the neighborhood.
He's talking about on the other side of the school, Mike, not the middle school. He's talking about the middle, or the.
South side of Minerva
He's
Lake.
talking about Minerva, France.
Yes.
Yeah, right there. Which,
You
I've
go up
got
that
enough
easement.
water in my backyard, right?
I know that.
I mean, wanna slope it towards your yard, that's cool. I'm all for it.
We can put like a little pond and, you know, we can boat to school.
And I don't know if everybody's aware, but where the railroad trestle used to be, City of Columbus has purchased that and they're putting a shared path.
Boom, exactly, that's what I was talking about.
From Northland to Cooper. We don't need a shared use path to connect Westville Road to Columbus through our neighborhood. Because City of Columbus is working on,
What's wrong with that right there? Right back here where these trees are at, connects you right up to the intersection.
come up to the school.
Between the houses and the school.
How do you access it on the east end though?
They're gonna put it into,
They have-
Columbus is
Okay.
putting in a new path.
I'm gonna stop everybody.
Supposedly.
Again, we're talking about walking paths and this
Right
is
here,
a street
right.
project. So,
Let's do one side.
we're getting an option A and an option B. That is not what we are here for. So you can have this conversation after. I just don't wanna keep everybody else here.
Is everybody concerned about a shared use path?
Is everybody?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I think the sidewalk, a 4-foot concrete
Mm-hmm.
sidewalk, increases our property values
Correct.
on that section of Minerva Lake Road because we're so close to the schools.
Correct.
So kids that buy our houses in the future can walk right to 3 different schools.
I will not argue with the sidewalk.
I know you're gonna suffer because it's gonna take some of your
I
driveways.
will not argue with the sidewalk. I think there's other options, but I do not want an 8 or 6 foot shared use path, especially if it's asphalt.
You have 3 council people here right now, and I will say this for the record for everybody here as well. I don't either.
You have
I
4.
do not, and do we, oh, sorry. We have 4. There is no argument with that. I mean, to me, if I was putting it through my front yard, I honestly will say this, I would not be happy with and I don't know if you guys wanna have this conversation, and Mike will kill us if we do say that, but I don't have an issue if we remove the black path.
I
And
don't either.
only, no, I know you don't. I didn't know if you were too far in that. I don't even have a problem removing that part because I wouldn't want that through my front yard. I don't disagree. And I know you didn't put it in there.
No,
I'm aware.
We know why you put it in there, we understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, for cost purposes, and if we wanna leave it in just so everybody can see what it is, but I too agree with that. I don't make the decision, I don't get to vote, and I don't have to vote, and I'm lucky I don't have to, but I'm not in disagreement with that.
Second part of my question, Mike. The incline of some of our driveways, what's gonna happen? I got a driveway that I can just barely come out of my driveway with because of the decline where it comes down to the street, and I'll just miss it with my trailer hitch. When you guys back the road up, now you're gonna be up at a higher incline in my driveway, where when I come out, now I'm really gonna hit it.
And the intent is that we'll have to look at each driveway. Like I said, we have a plan for every driveway. And we're gonna have to see how far back into each driveway we go
Right.
to make that connection better. I can't promise you I can't tell you the exact slopes right now. But for some people, it might mean that we have to come farther into your property to flatten that out.
I was gonna say, you'll probably have to regrade mine. Then I think my neighbor's driveway goes up like this and goes in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not probably gonna come back and like redo someone's reverse incline, but
Yeah. Okay, that was my second.
Oh, you're good. Does anybody have, and again, we wanna answer as many questions. Go ahead.
I'm on further down Minerva Lake Road, but I'm just kind of trying to puzzle through. Of course, I think you should absolutely take that tar off pathway out of there. Don't even get it fit on it. There's constable change and people change, and we don't even want people thinking about that. That's my opinion. I wouldn't want, heaven forbid, it would just be awful. So, but I'm thinking just big picture, long term, being further down on Minerva Lake Road, and knowing where everybody else's streets are in the old section. It's not great. It's pretty lousy. And if we weren't trying to dress up Farview, I understand why we are, sort of, but would it be better to be able to repave more streets than put the money right now towards the curb and gutter? What is that? You know, the bigger picture goal in terms of the rest of the streets that need to be redone,
The bigger picture goal is this pavement is failing.
right? I understand that one section of Farview.
All of Minerva Lake Road is failing.
Right, so I'm in the section that's failing, and you're spending all your money on another section, not that I want my,
Well, you don't have as much washout as the downhill.
Right, so all of Minerva Lake Road is failing. It's all classified as poor.
right?
But on top of it, we know that there's a drainage problem over here that's making it worse, faster.
Right, but now we're.
So we're
saying-
addressing that first.
Well, you're
because-
addressing that, but you're dressing it up as well. You're saying, well, if we're going to address this, let's address this, and let's redo the curbs, and let's do.
No, we're not, I'm not dressing it up.
That's how you fix it.
That's how I'm fixing it.
Is with curb and gutter. is
I
how you
can't fix the
flow.
stormwater problem without the curb and gutter.
They're gone.
No, I'm fairly certain, if you go back to these roads, there are curbs.
Yeah, but
They're
they
just
were-
buried.
If you look at them, but they were piecemeal curbs.
They-
They weren't really poured curbs.
Yeah.
Go in front of my house.
So
full curb,
we're not
barely.
coming to this section of Minerva Lake Road and adding curb and gutter because I want to add curb and gutter to make the street have curbs and gutters. We're coming into this section of Minerva Lake Road and adding curb and gutters because that's how we're preventing the drainage from continuing to be a problem. The curb and gutters are addressing a problem. It's not an aesthetic thing. It's addressing the problem of the stormwater.
So Diane, I can tell you, it was very obvious when they did the development that we always had water coming down that hill. It was very obvious when they did MI that there was a problem because I had a neighbor 3 houses down, he's moved. He used to wheel wheelbarrows of gravel back up to the intersection. Yep. Because there's so much water that comes down off of Farview Road now. I have neighbors and mine, our driveways are washing out. When-
Even in my section, I just did it for the year, once a year I shovel, because that's what you put a little curb there. And so every year I take my wagon and I shovel, I get about 4 wagonfuls of gravel. That's just, settled.
You do have a little bit coming from Cleveland Avenue.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's the way it goes.
I will just make one blanket comment though about Minerva Lake Road. What happens west of Farview? I honestly don't even want to consider it right now. Because there's that, what's gonna have to happen, the nice thing is Farview Road is a break point, right? Farview is a break point, North Bay is a break point, right? So we can identify these break points. But that section from basically the municipal building over to Cleveland Avenue, the pavement's super thin, narrow, it's windy. If we go in there to even put in curb and gutter, by the time we get to that, we're saying this is $1.4 million to fix this section. I wouldn't be surprised to fix an equivalent length of this from Cleveland Avenue coming the other direction, double that.
And you're gonna need a police officer in here for that meeting.
So what's gonna happen west of Farview is
It's not gonna happen.
very, I don't control the money, so,
Oh, no,
but,
I'm not.
but it's just, it's a little,
I'm just trying to figure
it's,
out where.
it's a major undertaking. And it might not be the same answer. It might not, I think there's value in having curb and gutter. I think there's value in that. It helps to control the stormwater, right? In a perfect world, if I had the room and the village had the money, I would put curb and gutter in every single roadway project we did. But the problem is, it's not just curb and gutter. It has to go somewhere. And there are no storm sewers up there. So one of the advantages of this project has is it's already flowing in the direction we need it to go to connect to an existing storm sewer system. Everything else, there's just sporadic storm sewers. We don't have a very well-developed storm sewer network in the original part of the village.
So what you're saying is, being here we lived here for 38 years, and so we're probably not gonna see it in our lifetime.
I wouldn't,
It seems
I
like we're not going to.
I mean,
We should.
I will not speculate on when work will happen. I mean, this project by itself, it basically exceeds the annual budget of the
Well,
village.
exactly.
So, I mean,
So this one must be really important, and, but it's gonna be that, we're coming down, when it's all done, it's gonna be, well, it's gonna be, oh, look at the sidewalk, oh, what happened to this part? It's going to be markedly as if you moved, as if you're in a different village, once you cross over Farview, once you're done, because it's gonna look very lovely, I'm sure.
So,
it should.
okay, yeah. So bringing this back full circle, we continue to work on getting grants and funding for the village, for these particular street projects. The street project is the project, and I cannot and will not express that. That is what we're here for. Like you had mentioned, the whole village may eventually, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now, have sidewalks. I don't know, trust me, I won't be here then. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's that. I'm gonna be retired way before then. But this village, we rely on funding, we rely on all of those things because we don't have the big industrial places like many people do. And over the last couple of years, as Mike mentioned, I've worked with Ben to get 0% interest OPWCs to fix sewers. This council has done a phenomenal job, and the previous ones, getting funding so we can get these projects done. Some of which, again, 0%, 1%. We are going to continue to work on street projects, and I would hate to say that it's going to be that long before something like that happens. But going back just a little ways, and we're going to close this out, but we did a street analysis in 2016 and in 2022. We got this information from that street analysis that this particular area has gone downhill much quicker than other ones. As he also mentioned, Valley is one that's over to the pool that has been failing since 2016. That is probably the worst road, and unfortunately, probably the least used road. So that is why it is not a huge priority, and I don't want to say that it's not, but we have one house and the pool right there. We're trying to match that with other things. We did the Maplewood because, again, it has been failing since the 2016. So we are planning out for the next 5, how many years out are we planning street projects right now?
I'm working with fiscal on 5-year plan.
So a 5-year plan. I don't know what the next one is for 2026, 27, but there is a plan already in place that we will get moving on that one as soon as this one's done. So again, we will continue to work for grant money. We will continue to work for low interest rates, loans, and in a perfect world, do we want to move forward on sidewalks? Yes, but right now, our focus is the street project in itself. I don't want to imply that you guys are never going to hear anything else about these sidewalks. Again, that's why we brought it up, because it is something that I'm fully aware people are going to not be happy, and there's going to be just as many people that are thrilled. Because for sidewalks, so not with the black, I get that, and that's something that we can talk about later, and maybe we have a meeting this Thursday, not this Thursday, next Thursday, today is Thursday. They typically start around 7 o'clock, give or take a little bit. We do have citizen comments, people can come in here and make comments. All of our email addresses are on our website, so you can go there and just shoot an email to council, they do read them. And as far as saying, look, this is something I'm not interested in, or, again, if you have an idea of something that maybe we've missed, that, this makes more sense, feel free, send it. But point being, streets, sewers have been the number one thing that I have worked on in the last 6 years. Sidewalks came about because of this Linkus thing and because of some other funding that we've been able to get, but ultimately, this is the project that is the most important for me right now.
One more question.
Yeah, just if I could real quick, 2 trees is what we're showing right now.
Which two?
I don't know, they're not small. It's
Both of them are in your yard.
It's a 30 and
Both are in your
it's a
yard.
30 and a 60. 30-inch tree and a 60-inch.
Are they on which side of the road? Are they both for the walking path, or these are for one side or the other for the street project?
I think they're associated with the sidewalk/path.
Okay. So do we know if there's any trees coming out for the extension of the 2.5 feet?
I don't think there's anything being affected by the roadway project
Okay.
itself.
Will the grade of the road be the same up where the hill is? Will that be less slope, more slope, or the same?
The intent is to generally match the existing, because again, we're stuck, right? We have a starting point and an end point that we have to match. And if we do too much profile changes, then we have to regrade everybody's yard.
Okay.
Because we have to, otherwise then your driveways won't match up and your yards won't match up, then we have to regrade yards. So the intent is to generally match the existing profile. I would love to kind of flatten the whole thing, and have a nice straight.
During the winter time with buses and everything, and especially parents like going to get school kids, you can get, and then all of a sudden if you stop.
You start, yeah.
And it's
I
not
remember
reversed.
you guys were putting de-icer or something on it not too long ago, like at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that. So does anybody have any additional questions right now? So,
I don't want to say a question,
go ahead.
but you're talking about wanting to reduce the impact in the yards.
Yes.
Someone seriously consider, take the mailboxes on the side where sidewalks are, put them on the other side of the street, and follow your Maplewood sidewalk design down River Lake Road. Like that, the post office would be more than happy not.
That's the thing, it all comes to those guys. My concern is that they'll say, all right, if you're willing to do that, we're gonna make you centralized mail locations. Because that's the trend in central Ohio right now. I don't know how the golf course development didn't get centralized mailboxes.
They tried.
Because that's the trend from
Takes less people.
like an apartment or a condo where
crazy.
you go to a thing but I think it's a valid point. I'm not saying I won't bring it up. I'm almost like, I have to talk to them anyway. But I mean, that's not a bad idea. Fire hydrants are on the north side too. And so that's why the sidewalk is kicked out like 3 feet. We have that utility strip that you commonly see, because you don't want the sidewalk right up against the curb in a residential area. That's more like a downtown thing, a city center thing. Because the point is you want to get to people away from the road. So you have to allow enough room for that the fire hydrants to get in there, mailboxes, street trees, things like that. But there's probably value in seeing if we could maybe shorten that up a little bit by moving mailboxes.
I would like to see sidewalks. I hate seeing those kids walking on the streets.
That's a good idea.
How many kids walk from Westville Road to one of the schools? I don't know,
but don't forget, this is not just for school kids. Part of the intent is to make people be able to, and this will be the closer, I guess. But like if you read a lot of the information from like Link Us, or you read the information from most transit authorities, one of the biggest problems of increasing the use of public transportation is what they call the last mile. And right now, the last mile is, like, CODA isn't gonna run a bus down Minerva Lake Road.
Yeah.
They're gonna stay on Westerville Road or Cleveland Avenue. So how do you make it easier for people to get to those bus lines? And that's one of the big pushes of Link Us. So while this is partly, to benefit kids getting to and from schools, it's also there for the community to potentially get to a bus route more easily. Or, one of the reasons we're focused on this part is also, you get to the Allen Creek Trail more easily.
But the city of Columbus already has plans to link that on 161. So it doesn't need to be us that's doing it.
But how do we get there from here? We walk down the sidewalk to get to there. Instead of walking in our streets. If I have my car parked here and I'm trying to get over there, the first thing I'm gonna do is walk
The
out
link-
here.
the
And
link us-
hopefully get to a
The
sidewalk.
Link Us,
You're talking about a bus.
the Link Us route, the Link Us planning shows coming down Minerva Lake Road, I think turning north and going up State Route 3 for a little bit, and then crossing over to connect to the Allen Creek Trail.
What is that?
I think that's what's shown in the Link Us documentation.
Was it bus? The bus
No.
isn't coming.
The bus
No.
isn't coming here, no, that's the
A
walk.
route to get to the Allen Creek Trail. They're showing just a path, not a bike path, just mobility of some sort,
So,
coming down.
so why do we want those people to come through Minerva Park?
Because it's me, I'm walking, I go there.
I walk every
I'm just,
single
I'm
day.
saying in general, I'm not saying it's just for me. Because it's you, it's you, it's you. It's residents trying to get from, like, from our neighborhood to be able to go outside of our neighborhood safely.
I just wanna
So it's
walk
not
down
just
the road.
inside our neighborhood, it's so we can ride our bikes, there's many people, I don't ride bikes.
I ride my bike.
So we can ride our bikes to get from A to Z as well.
So, but the city of Columbus, currently they're doing all this construction on 161. They have on their plans to extend that bike, that shared bike path from around 161 down to Westerville Road over to Allen Creek.
And this is to get us from this building to get to those areas safely, to Westerville Road. When we have a sidewalk here, we're not walking in our own streets.
Again, I've been talking about sidewalk is one thing. Again, when you're talking about the shared path, and I just want to make sure the shared path is not part of this conversation.
That's what we're missing that you're saying, because yeah, I think we just talked about just removing
I
it.
thought that was the Allen Creek Trail that they were running up through there.
That sounds
Down
entirely
Minerva
different.
Lake Road. I mean, Westerville.
Westerville Road, I don't know what Westerville Road is doing.
That's the one where they're taking over the old railroad system.
Right,
Yeah, that's-
they're doing something, but I don't know what material they're
It's the
using.
Linden Green line, but it's.
It's the, yeah,
It's the green line, but
it's supposed to be like the Westerville to get you to downtown.
It gets you to Cooper
Right.
Road.
It used to
Yeah,
be,
Cooper Road.
it used to be called like the
Yeah.
WAD, like
And
Westerville
it's-
area to downtown or something like that.
And he had said to use the word route instead of, the route way to get there instead of using like path. When we say path, we mean some type of hard surface to get us from here to here.
I would be more.
So you want us to
comfortable-
use the word concrete?
I want the term sidewalk.
I like a sidewalk.
Because that's what I'm missing that you were saying, I'm like, that's what we're talking about, that we get from here to here. So yes, instead of using
Matches the
walking
conversation.
path, just use the word sidewalk.
But again, we're talking about some CODA's link to come through.
That's something entirely different down there by the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a sidewalk going up and down.
Just to
so
get
we
us
can
to there.
walk in our
Yeah.
neighborhood and not be worried about getting hit by
And
cars.
j- and-
That's
and-
what this subject.
And Link Us is not, they're not giving money to only shared use paths. They're giving money to mobility options. That can be sidewalks, it can be shared use paths, it can be recreational trails. They have a term for it. I don't know what it is, but it's basically mobility access.
They're making us handicap accessible, that's what it helps.
So they can put stipulations on how narrow or wide it can be, to link us.
Speak up, John.
I mean, narrow, if you're going to do it, you have to comply to make it ADA compliant, and that's, I think, generally 4 feet. But they're not intending to dictate standards to you. You as an applicant go to them and say, here's the project we want to do, and then they will fund it or not.
I'm just making sure, like, if we go. from
Yeah, like if you
6,
accept
7,
it,
4,
right, like-
They'll say, no, you have to do 6.
No, that's fair. That's, my understanding is that's not the case.
Okay,
Thank you everyone for coming,
Thank you.
Will this PowerPoint be on the website?
I will send Barb a PDF of it, and it will be posted wherever she tends to post those things.
Thank you.
and then,
So right across the street.
Should be finding it,
and again,
On the website, there's been a red banner at the top that was talking about this meeting, so maybe I'll leave that there and see if I can make that a clickable link to this.
so after the first of
If you
the
decide to
year,
let me do that, that's what
Should I turn this off?
yes. So after the first of the year is probably the